Hello and welcome back to the Linux Panic YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be going over what is Kali Linux and how to install it. So before we carry on, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. So you're probably wondering, what is Kali Linux? Well, Kali Linux is a penetration testing / security development software package that originated from Backtrack Linux back in 2013. In 2013, Kali Linux was rebuilt from top to bottom from Backtrack into what we now know as Kali Linux today. It's built on the Debian architecture, and according to the Kali Linux documentation, Kali Linux sticks to the Debian development thesis. So once we've booted up our Kali installer on our install media of choice, in this case I'm using a VMware virtual machine, we're going to select language of choice. In this case for me it's English, and then from there it's going to be English. We're in the United States, we'll use American English. Now what this is going to do, it is going to go through the various processes and just say, hey look, I'm trying to figure out what's here, and from there we can see it's loading the installation components we need. Don't worry about this, this is just virtual. This is VMware just asking, hey look, can I have access? No, you can't. Please stop trying to ask me for it to release input. I'm not going to give it to you. So it's just going to go through the various install steps. What I found here, it looks like a Debian install, which is perfectly fine. It does the job it needs to do. It's a perfectly good piece of kit. We don't need to change the host name because it's just Kali. I have no reason to change the host name, and most of the time you wouldn't have a reason to change it either, unless you're on a greater network that is not a private one, such as a work network. That's something you'd have to change the host name for. But we're going to keep that. We're not going to change the host name, as we're not part of anything else. We're just going to leave it blank, and then from there we're going to add a new user. So in this case we're going to make the user Kali. I'm going to use username for the account, and because I'm only testing this as a demonstration, we're going to have this also set to Kali. Now from here, this is going to go through the setting up of the disk. It's going to go, hey look, I'm grabbing the clock information from a time server. Now this time server could be anywhere, it could be doing numerous things. As we can see here are time zones that come with Linux. There's a lot of time zones Linux offers you, but in this case it's just, I'll be selecting Eastern. It's going to ask you where you want to install the operating system to. So in this case, and how you want to use it. So in this case, I want to use the entire disk with the guided setup. As we can see here, there's 21.5 gigs worth of install space. Install it all in one place. I don't want to separate anything out, because ideally, if you wanted to distro jump, you would use a separate home partition. That way everything user based is kept in the same place, whereas going with all files in the same place, if you distro jump, you would lose everything. So that is an argument for having a separate home partition if you wanted to distro jump, but in this case we don't. I'm going to keep everything here. Going to keep the standard settings. I want to write these changes to disk. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to set up the file system as ext4. It's going to set up the main disk as swap space again. So this is just like your hardware. This is the Windows equivalent of a page file. Now hardware has gotten so fast over recent years that use of a page file and swap space is not really needed anymore. So in this case we're just going to ignore that. It makes no difference, but we want to write these changes to disk. Select OK. And what we are going to do here is now we're just going to watch and wait as it installs the base system. Now this could take a couple minutes, it could take 5-10. In my testing previously, it took about 10 minutes to install from start to finish with no bothers. Like, this is again a wonderful benefit of Linux. It doesn't take as long as everything else does, as Windows or Mac OS does. You tell it to do something and it just does it. It's no bother at all. So whilst we wait for the base install system, we're just gonna watch it here. It's gonna be telling what it's doing. From here we can see it's installing App Armor. It's just going through the basic install process. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sit and wait for it to be done. So as we can see here, this is asking for, hey, look, what desktop environment do you want? Now, there are 3 choices we can pick from. There's XFace, which is the Kali default. There's GNOME, which is what is used by Fedora and now was used by Fedora and Ubuntu. Or we can use KDE. Now, in this case, I'm not a fan of KDE. GNOME is alright, but I very much prefer XFace, so we're going to stick with XFace. This is going to install the collection of tools that comes with Kali, as well as the default recommendation. So we're just going to click continue. And now what we've got to do is wait for it to install, download and install all 2,107 files. So we're just going to sit and wait for the time being and wait for it to finish. So once that's installed, it's going to ask you to select and install software. But in this case, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you what you want to do for the grub bootloader. Now, this is needed for booting the operating system. Now, as we can see here, it says, hey, look, this is what it's going to do. If there's another operating system on it, the bootloader may fail to detect it, and it could make this operating system unable to boot, but you can then go into grub later on and then boot again. But in this case, as Kali is the only one on this virtual machine, I'm just going to go, yep, okay, install the bootloader. I want to install it on DevSTA, which for Linux is, hey, look, this is the main drive. In this case, it's only one, so it's DevSTA. If there were more, it'd be DevSTB, SDC, and so on and so forth. But in this case, as there's only one, it's just dev SDA. And what it's going to do is going to install grub, reload it, we'll update it, and then go from there. As we can see here, it's just finishing off the installation of Kali. So what it's going to do is going to update the hardware clock, update the everything, make sure it's all good and ready to go. And from what we can see here, this is just updating the initialization. Something to do with the initialization. I'm not quite sure what that is. I will Google that at some point in the future. But in this case, it's just running everything it needs to do, cleaning up, preparing for first boot as a proper operating system instead of an installer. So we just got to sit here and wait for it to finish. So once we're at this point, we're going to say, okay, I wish to reboot. And then from there on, it's just going to go through the process of rebooting. As we can see here, we want to select the GNU Linux. And as we can see in the top left-hand corner, it is using the Linux kernel 5.15.0-Kali3 AMD64. So it's using the 64-bit version of the 5.15 kernel. So it's just going to go through the process of setting up. Now, what I found in the initial install, when I did this earlier on, it flashed a terminal login screen momentarily. And in this case, as you can see here, it's just flashing this up. But before you get a chance to log in properly, it's then going to load up the XFCE login screen correctly, as we can see here. So what we need to do is just enter our username and password. So in my case, it's Kali, because again, I'm only just testing. I will put in the password. There we go. Put in the password correct the second time around, and we're now greeted once it loads up. We're greeted with a desktop environment. Now, this is not your usual XFCE. This is a Kali XFCE variation. As is part of the course, Kali has everything along the top, not the bottom. So things will look a bit different. So if we look at their documentation, let me just go grab their documentation. I don't wish to install, look at their documentation. They say that Kali Linux is a distribution that is aimed at advanced penetration testing and security auditing and contains several hundred tools. Now that we're here, we can actually go and have a look through the tools that are available for Kali. So in this case, then we have 14 categories to go through to have a look at that have various tools in it. So in this case, we got post-exploitation, we got sniffing and spoofing, all that sort, all the like basic attacks you could expect to use, or penetration testing, or just auditing tools that you may need at any point in time. So in this case, we're just going to have a look at one of the most well-known ones, Wireshark. So what we need to do is just give it a chance to load up, and then from what we're going to do is say, hey, look at ETH0 and tell me what's going on. Now in this case, this isn't doing much at all. It's just looking at itself, because this is sat behind another network adapter on my computer, so it can only see itself. In this case, it is on 153. My computer is a different one to this, but as we can see here, it's just doing everything it needs to, just sending queries back and forth, saying, hey, look, are you live? Yada yada yada. In this case, this is talking to the host device, or the host adapter. Well, in this case, it's VMware saying, hey, look, can I have the MAC address for this address, this IP address, and finding out who it is? So that's what Wireshark does. But in this case, I don't need any of this, so we can just close out. But this is what Kali looks like. It comes with a multitude of other tools and so on and so forth. Now, in the future, if you would like, I can go through more tools, go through a greater in-depth tutorial on what the tools do and how to use them. I am considering doing that as well, because I've been wanting to get more into Kali and just explore what it can do, and it is a very, very powerful operating system if used correctly. Now, what I'm showing you here is only for educational purposes only. I am not responsible for what you do with it. I am not responsible for any damage that may occur from your use of it. This is for educational purposes only. So, once we've got it installed, you can go through the various tools. You've got your information gathering, vulnerability, web applications, so all your stuff here, CMS, all that jazz, password, wireless. Basically anything that can be used against other people is here. But then again, you also have the option of installing more of your own software as well. So in this case, let's just install NeoFetch. So in this case, we want to just do sudo apt install NeoFetch. Yes, I know I'm using the sudo password for the first time. Yada yada yada. Here is your general warning: do not abuse this. Now, as you may have noticed, I used apt earlier on. As previously mentioned, this is a Debian variation. So if you're used to using Ubuntu or Debian or Mint or Cinnamon or Mint Cinnamon, Pop OS, anything that runs on an Ubuntu variation or a Debian variation uses apt. In this case, this is also using apt as well. It works. It's a powerful tool. It's a very nice piece of software. So in this case here, we are using Kali. It is a rolling update. This is a rolling updatable platform, kernel 5.15. Most up to date is using XFCE 4.16 with the window manager FWM4 using the dark theme. It's a nice theme. I very much like it. So yeah, this is what the install process of Kali looks like and what it is used for. Anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. If you're not already subscribed, maybe hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Leave a comment. Tell me what you want to see with this, and tell me what you like. I'd like to thank my patrons Raining Hazmat and Ashley for being subscribed over at Patreon, where you can subscribe for as little as $1 a month. You can get early access to videos such as this one. Anyway, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I have been Nick, you have been amazing, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.